Next up is Voices of Change with your hosts, Leslie Acosta and Isa Richardson. Voices of Change is to connect, inform, and empower people to engage in social political change. Right here on USALA Radio. World news, local politics, saving money and investing, all this and more right here on USALA Radio. Your voice, your radio.
Thank you for tuning in. You are listening to Voices of Change on USALA Radio with your host, Leslie Acosta. Co-host Aisha Richardson took the day off today. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone. We are now into the weekend, Black Friday. Everyone is out shopping, hopefully, and spending that money for Christmas, right? Pumping that money into the economy. Well, that is so good. Today, we're going to have an interesting conversation about the Latino vote. Not only here locally, statewide, but also nationally. We're going to have a guest today. His name is David Rodriquez. David Rodriquez is a political activist and chairman of the Latino caucus of the Pennsylvania State Democratic Party. He will be with us shortly. Today, I want to address why Latinos have yet to experience a power surge, I would say, despite significant population gains locally, statewide, and nationally, but yet continue to be underrepresented in American political institutions. That is a fact. Let's start with the national numbers. Hispanics are one of the fastest growing groups in the United States, and yet we are underrepresented in the American political institutions. Hispanics are about 17.8% of the U.S. population. That translates into 57.5 million Hispanics. Although Congress has a record number of Latino members, currently at 41 Latinos in the House and 4 in the Senate, their numbers will fall short of matching the share of the U.S. population that is Hispanic. Why no power behind the Hispanic vote? That's the main question today that we're going to be addressing, and hopefully we're going to be unpacking for the listeners today why that is. Well, since the 1960s, the Hispanic vote has proven to be influential in local, state, and national elections. In presidential elections in particular, political candidates have paid special attention to the Hispanic vote since Hispanics are concentrated in 5 key states. That is California, New York, Florida, Texas, and Illinois. States that together comprise over half of the electoral vote majority needed for election to the presidency. That's why this 2020 election is going to be so crucial and important to elect the next president of the United States. And Latinos will have a major focus in this presidential election. We're going to take a short break. We'll be right back. You're listening to Voices of Change on USALA Radio. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
$150 over $90.
180 over 111.
160 over 110. I had a stroke.
This is what high blood pressure looks like. You might not feel its symptoms, but the results from a stroke are far from invisible or silent. If you've come off your treatment plan, get back on it, or talk with your doctor to create an exercise, diet, and medication plan that works for you. Go to loweryourhbp.org.
If I would have followed a treatment plan, I would not be in this situation.
Our hearts are made stronger by how we treat others.
Put her there.
The light you share can impact those around you, but so can the darkness.
Later, twerps.
Did Pete saying mean things bother you?
So when you reach out to another person, take a moment to consider how they will feel and let your heart be the key to making a difference. Because of you, someone's entire day, year, or even life can change.
In every heart, there's hope.
What
What do you think you're doing, Kevin?
Was just gonna drive home.
There are several warning signs present that you shouldn't be driving.
Like hearing voices?
Like your text-to-emoji ratio?
Oh man, the selfies.
Selfie nailed it.
We all have warning signs that let us know that we're probably not okay to drive. Mine is pretending to be your subconscious.
Craig, come on man, let's split a ride home.
Thank you and welcome back. You are listening to Voices of Change on Usala Radio. We are talking about the Latino vote, not only here locally, statewide, and also nationally. Today we're going to address 4 specific things in regards to why Latinos have been underrepresented in the political institutions of this country. We're going to talk about gerrymandering. We're going to talk about no unity. We're going to talk about they don't believe that their vote counts. The Latinos feel that their vote don't count. We need to have a new alignment. And number 5, we're going to look for, or try to at least start looking for candidates that can inspire us. So we're going to address those 5 issues. But before we get to that, there are several factors that hinder their political participation as well as their development into a unified voting bloc. One such factor, I would say, is the youth of the population, which are less likely to take an active interest in the political culture. Secondly, a large segment of the legal Hispanic population cannot vote because they are not yet citizens of the U.S. 52% of all Hispanics legally in the U.S. do not vote because they're not eligible to vote. Let's talk about poverty. It's a third factor which affects political participation. The lower level of education and income tends to affect political participation. And since Hispanics have a higher poverty rate than any other American, they are less likely to participate in the political process, even though they are more likely to gain from their participation. Factors that contribute to low voter turnout include apathy, a belief that their vote will not make a difference, as well as a distrust of politics and politicians. And yet Hispanics are the most diverse group in the United States. It may also be unrealistic, listen carefully, it may also be unrealistically to expect the Hispanic population to develop into a powerful voting bloc given the diversity of our population. We are perhaps the most diverse group in the U.S. Hispanic trace their ancestry to 22 different nations and their experiences in the U.S. as just too different. Some Hispanics can trace their family presence in the United States back several centuries, while others are first-generation immigrants. Some have immigrated for political reasons, others for economic opportunity. Some are living below poverty level, while others have worked their way into the middle class. Some are Catholic, others are Protestant, Jewish, and even Buddhist, Chinese, Cubans. Some Hispanics are bilingual, while others speak only Spanish, or conversely, only English. Racially, Hispanics are also quite diverse. Even within one Hispanic group, there can be important regional, social, economic, cultural, religious, and these racial and cultural differences affect political behavior. The 3 largest Hispanic groups are the Mexican Americans, they stand at 56%, the Puerto Ricans at 10%, and the Cubans at 5%. Each group has played an important political role. not only in local elections, statewide elections, and in national elections. And that is a fact. Historically, if you will, Mexican Americans have lived in the southwestern U.S., Puerto Ricans settled in the Northeast, and Cubans settled in Florida. Since World War II, Hispanics began to settle outside of the historical areas of concentration, which means this can affect the vote and the voting bloc. Mexican Americans, for example, have settled in very large numbers in the Midwest and Great Lakes region. Puerto Ricans have settled in the Midwest. This means that they have to form political coalitions. This is important, folks. I need you to understand this. Puerto Ricans, in its majority, have had to settle in different places, and as a result, they've had to form political coalitions with other Hispanics or non-Hispanic groups like African Americans and Asian Americans. And they have to, this is a fact. And they have done this in order to lobby for legislation that will benefit as many Hispanics and minorities as possible. This is oftentimes quite difficult to do. In the city of Chicago, for example, conservative Cubans who tend to vote Republican find it difficult to work with the more liberal Puerto Ricans and Mexican Americans who tend to vote Democratic. So what happens is this divides the vote and our voting bloc. However, in spite of such challenges, in 2018, Latino voter turnout yielded some real victories. Let's talk about Darren Soto, who became the first Puerto Rican congressman. New York's Adrano Espaillat is the first Dominican elected to serve in Congress. Catherine Cortez was elected in Nevada, becoming the first Latina in the U.S. Senate. Hey, and let's talk about Alexandra Cortez, who became the youngest female Puerto Rican to win that seat in New York. Latinos can show their political action. They can show through political action how we can significantly improve our channels of opportunity to be adequately represented in American political institutions. It is shameful that we have 57% or 57 million Latinos living in the United States, and we only have 41 in Congress, in the House, and 4 in the Senate. And if we go to our local states, here in Pennsylvania, we only have 1 in the city and 2 in the state. Are you kidding me? But we can show and we can channel that opportunity to be represented. And I think we must think critically about what it means to be a racialized minority with a majoritarian U.S. political system and how that position structures Latinos' ability to achieve their social, economic, and political goals. So let's start the conversation on what can motivate us to get involved and improve channels of opportunity for us. We can no longer afford to be on the menu, David. And I'm going to introduce you in a minute because you have an important role here, not only locally, but also statewide. David, the historic win of Wilson Good in 1983 signified the emergence of the African American voting bloc. African Americans mobilized, they demanded change, and gained a greater role in city politics when they delivered that win to Mayor Wilson Good. Do you remember that, David?
Yes, indeed.
Exactly. But unlike African Americans who now wield considerable political clout here in the city of Philadelphia, Latinos have yet to experience a burgeoning power in Philadelphia and in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And despite a rapidly growing population, Latino political representation remained the same as it was 30 years ago. Latinos hold just 1 of the 17 city council offices and only 2 of Philadelphia's 35 state legislative seats in office. The city has yet to elect a Latino mayor, a state senate. And let's even go further. We don't even have congressional representation. That stands in stark contrast, David, to cities like New York and Chicago, which have elected a considerable number of Latinos to city, state, and federal offices. At 12.3%, Philadelphia's Latino population is significantly smaller and poorer than those cities who also expected to grow at a higher rate over the next 15 years. So why no political power? That's the essence here, David. What's going on that we lack this political power here in the city of Philadelphia, which is very frustrating? David, welcome to Voices of Change. You are listening to Usala on Usala Radio. You're listening to Voices of Change. David, welcome, and thank you for being with us this morning. And David, I think you and I have had this conversation over and over again about why there's so much disunity, why we don't, even though we have numbers, we're not a voting block. And guess what happens? If you're not a voting block in the city of Philadelphia, they do not pay attention to you. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether you're at the table or not. In fact, we're not even on the menu at this point, David. So welcome, David. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good, Leslie. Thank you for this opportunity to speak to you and to your audience on this Saturday, beautiful Saturday morning. First, I want to identify who I am. My name is David Rodriquez. I am the chairman of the PA Democratic Latino Caucus, which I'm going to tell you a little bit about ourselves. We were created in June of 2015. The caucus was created for increase of political participation in Latino community in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, which we are the state fastest growing ethnic community. In 2010, the census had doubled since the last census before that, which would make us 720,000, or about 6% at that time. Then we increased to 834,000 Hispanics in Pennsylvania, which we are the 31st largest statewide population nationally.
Right.
In Philadelphia, this time for the census for 2020, we're expecting to be over 1 million, way over 1 million. So we are encouraging everybody to please participate in that census. Let me speak to you about, you've been mentioning something about Philadelphia, which this year we had for city council 3 Latinos on the ballot for the first time ever running for city council. Unfortunately, none of us made it because really 3 people running for city council at large, Latinos, the numbers are not there. So what we actually did, I could encourage people to run. I could tell people maybe this is not your time, but it's up to the person to run because I can't tell you what to do. But we had 3 people. We had Adrian Rivera Reyes, we had Fernando Treviño, and we had Erika Aramon. And unfortunately, none of them made it. And one of the biggest problems we have here in Philadelphia is that the Latino community is not united. The Latino community, everybody's pulling for themselves. We have the ward structure, which makes it even harder here to have any influence or control. We could have influence, but to have the control that we want, we don't have it because everybody's pulling to their side. Is what's in it for them. Right. But I want to tell you something about statewide, what we did statewide. And as far as in Reading, we elected our first mayor in Reading. Eddie Moran is our mayor-elect. He will be inaugurated in January. We also have 2 Latinas that were also this year elected into city council in Reading. We have Melissa Ventura and Giovanni Cepeda in Reading. We also, in Lancaster, we got the majority in the city council in Lancaster, which we have Janet Diaz,
Right.
which she is a city council person. We also have new ones. We have Jaime Arroyo and Xavier Garcia Molina, which are city council members, will make us the majority. If we work together there, we could make the decisions ourselves. Latinos are the majority in Lancaster.
So they're the majority now in Lancaster. So, David,
Yes.
how many elected Hispanics do we have statewide for local
statewide,
seats?
I'm gonna tell you something. We also made history. Lou Rivera became the first Latino and the first openly gay city council person in York, Pennsylvania. We haven't had a Latino city council member in New York in over 20 years, and Lou Rivera made that change this year. This year, he was elected for that.
Right.
And then in Allentown, we'll have Julio Guridi, Cynthia Mota, and for school board, Linda Vega, which Philadelphia doesn't elect a school board, but if you go around the Commonwealth, the local school boards are elected members.
Right.
And Linda Vega just became a school board member, which is important. We could making decisions for our kids.
Right.
And we also had Dr. Damari Bonilla up in Monroe County, which is very difficult for a Latino to win anything up there.
Yes.
Just became a school board member herself. She was elected.
Right.
I
She
think
ran.
she's the
Yeah.
first.
She also ran for state rep, I believe, right, in that area.
That is correct. That is correct. So she lost the state rep 4 years ago, but she won the school board seat. So you started seeing that things are getting better up there for Latino, which we also had Nicardo Soto, who ran in Hazleton for a city council seat. She didn't win, but the important thing is in Hazleton is very difficult. It's you have a lot of Latinos, which are not the majority there. The majority still are, Anglos, but she only lost by 92 votes. So that means she was a crossover candidate. Not only got Latino votes, but also received Anglo votes as well. So as you see, we are all around the state. We're going to different areas. A lot of them are more difficult than others, but we are getting it done.
Well, that's a good.
Making sure that we have to, making sure that we are represented correctly in the state of Pennsylvania.
Well, kudos to you and kudos to the caucus, the Democratic caucus, for those efforts statewide, right? That obviously those races in those counties are a little bit different than here in Philadelphia. The makeup here in Philadelphia is a whole different animal, right? So
yeah, that is correct.
Right. So kudos to the Latino caucus of Pennsylvania for making those efforts. David, we're going to take a short break. You're listening to Voices of Change on Usala Radio, and we'll be right back, and we'll continue to have this conversation of the lack of political power here in not only here locally, statewide, but nationally. We'll be right back.
I came out in the 11th grade. Nobody was embracing you. Kids were cruel. It was very difficult to be gay. Not completing high school is more of a social thing than it was an academic thing. And even though all these years have passed, I still had that longing to have my diploma. I have a mentor, Maria, and she convinced me to continue my education.
Friends.
Beautiful person. No one receives a diploma alone. And I'm honored to share this moment with you. Thank you.
If you're even considering getting your high school diploma, go get it. You can do it.
find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org.
If you love them enough to suck the snot out of their nose at 4 a.m., then surely you'll check nhtsa.gov/the right seat to make sure they're in the right car seat.
Thank you and welcome back. You are listening to Voices of Change with your host, Leslie Acosta. Aisha Richardson took the day off today. We're having this conversation with David Rodriquez, who is the chairman of the Latino Caucus statewide here in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. We were talking before the break about the lack of representation in our political institutions, why that is. David was able to articulate and outline very well for us the efforts statewide on more Latinos being elected to city council seats, to the school board, which is a good thing, right? That's a good thing to mention because that means we are making inroads. We are uniting more our political clout and force to elect more Latinos statewide. However, citywide here in the city of Philadelphia, it's another story. It's a whole different conversation, and David knows that conversation very well. But David, one of the things that I want to look at is gerrymandering. Gerrymandering has been a very interesting dynamic on how to decrease or minimize, if you will, the Latino vote, right? Gerrymandering, infighting, and low voter turnout has stunted Latino political growth, I would say not only here but nationally. And that is a fact, that is an issue. The city of Philadelphia, we have about 187,000 Latinos right here in the city. So in terms of numbers, we have the numbers. We have the numbers to provide the political landscape that we want. We can create that shift with those numbers. I wonder, though, if during the mayoral race in 2021, can this be the catalyst, given the numbers that we have, for a Hispanic movement, much in the way how Mayor Good galvanized the black community decades ago? Can that really happen in 2021? Because we're going to have a Latina candidate running for mayor. That's going to happen. We did have Nelson Diaz, and he wasn't successful. But we're going to have Maria Quinones, and she's going to run for that seat. So the wave of Mayor Good, when the blacks organized and galvanized together decades ago, that gave birth to a political movement. And the activism during those years have died, David. They've died. It has died down, and there's only embers out there. How do we stoke those embers and fire them up and fire the Latino up? Let's talk quickly about gerrymandering. Angel Ortiz was elected to an at-large council seat in 1983. Having received backing of the African American Coalition, progressive organizations, but did not receive a lot of the Puerto Rican vote. 4 years ago, Nelson Diaz, as a mayor candidate, was appointed as Pennsylvania's first Latino judge. In 1984, Ralph Acosta was elected to the State House, the first Latino to serve there since German Quiles. Latinos appeared to be making some inroads in Philadelphia's political scene, but, David, the electoral growth has not matched the population gains of the Latinos, the city's most rapidly growing demographic. City Council has had one Latino member, from Ortiz to Juan Ramos to Maria Quinones. Latinos also represented just one state house district until 2013 when J.P. Miranda joined Angel Cruz in Harrisburg. And now we have Danilo Burgos. So I place some of the blame on redistricting. Latinos have been gerrymandered out of power throughout this city. In fact, the political process of redistricting has been a big challenge as far as growing our state. And this is also playing out in cities like Allentown and Reading. What say you, David?
You're correct. Gerrymandering has hurt us for years. I remember when we had State Representative Bill Rigger, and we were always trying to run somebody to for that seat to represent us, because Bill Rigger wasn't representing us.
That's right.
And the biggest problem we had is that the district was mainly in the Latino community, but they always gerrymander part of the district into the lower northeast in order to have that Anglo vote and to keep them there. And that's still going on today. That especially like, let's say the District 197, District 197 was split in order for the Latino and the African American to batter it out.
Well, you know and you know what, David? The 197th legislative district was secured after a lengthy redistricting fight following the 2010 census. And the electoral map was drawn in a way that was more equitable to the people that lived here, but it was gerrymandered so bad that if you look at the 197, there's 43% of the African American vote, and you have 53% of the Latino vote, which is split right in the middle. Why not have a district that is totally represented by the Latinos? And we have to split that vote. It's just a question out there.
No, we're going to make efforts this time around to have people that represent the caucus and represent our community. It doesn't have to be represent the caucus only, because the caucus does represent the community. In order, when those lines are drawn, that we will have proper, or at least we're the representation that we deserve.
Yeah, well,
we also.
Go ahead, David.
I also wanted to tell you about, there's a district, and I'm sorry that I'm taking you out of the city, in Reading, that is the 127th. And the 127th, which is right now occupied by Thomas Carter-Jerome, that district is part of it is in Reading, and then there's bits and pieces of it that goes out into Whitehall and other area which is Anglo. And when that happens, our people are misrepresented. We had a young man that ran there last time around. His name is Manny Guzman, and Manny Guzman came so close to winning that seat that he only lost by like 57 votes.
Right. So you know what, David?
And I think that gerrymandering had a lot to do with him losing that race.
Well, here's the thing. When the maps are redrawn, we have to be at the table. We have to be at the table. We can no longer afford not to be at the table when these maps are being redrawn. And so if we don't have adequate representation at the table with a voice representing the Latino community, we're not going to change the political landscape. We are not going to change it, not only statewide, but here also as well locally. And let me give you a quick example, right? The 7th District, it was also a subject of the debate for years. Remember when former Councilman Rick Mariano, he was in that seat after the census, after the 2000 census. That district was redrawn in such a zigzag fashion that it was considered the most gerrymandered local district in the country. Not in the country. But anyhow, the Latino population continued to grow, and the district was redrawn, and that enabled Maria Quiñones to become the first Latina elected in 2007. So yes, gerrymandering plays a big part in Latinos having or getting or being represented in those seats. And if we're not at the table, we're not going to change the political landscape, and we're not going to change or have Latinos in those political institutions. And that is a fact. Let's talk about the lack of unity, because that's a big issue, David. This lack of unity here and across the board, it's an issue. And if we don't learn how to unite behind candidates, or get candidates that are viable and that have a passion to do this for the people and for the common good of the people, we're going to continue to be divided. And that what that does, it depletes the vote, it divides the vote, and then that's why we don't have that political power or that voting bloc. So let's talk about unity. Our political structure is fragmented. That segmentation, coupled with some frustration at the Democratic Party, has hampered the Latino political growth in the city and across the state and the Commonwealth. There is no unity because people have, I believe, competing ideas and competing ideologies. Let's talk about that for a minute. Instead of uniting behind candidates, that are viable, that can do the right thing, that are qualified, we often run other Latinos against Latinos because we want to show our political muscle and strength. And so that becomes an issue as well, David, in electing more Latinos into the seats. What say you?
Well, locally, the thing is, we're not only divided locally, but we are divided statewide.
Absolutely.
I mean, there's going to be always somebody have their personal interests at hand instead of the community interest. And that's what hurt us. I think it's time to elect new people to represent us as far as on the local level. And I'm going to say straight up, we need new war leaders.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to single out any names or nothing like that. But if we want things to change, people are going to have to start running for judges of election and also committee people in order for things to change.
Well, and not only
because
that,
the thing is that the way that things are going on now, if it keeps going like this for another 10, 20 years, we're not going to advance.
Well, we're not going to advance because here's the other issue. Party leaders, they lack the vision to open up leadership positions for the growing Latino population. Period. Party leaders do not have the vision, and we need a new alignment. We need people with vision. The city of Philadelphia is a diversified community. The Latino community is a microcosm of diversity.
Well, the party leader's been in there. How long the party leader's been there?
Well, since
I was a kid.
Right, they've been there because we enable that. Because we don't. Because if we unite like the African Americans and the blacks united when Wilson Goode became became the mayor, we will become a voting bloc and we can demand those changes. But until we don't unite as a Latino community with one cause and with one common ground, we're not gonna see those changes. The division is going to exist, if you will. The party leaders, they want that to happen. They don't want us to be united. They don't want us to be a voting bloc because it becomes a threat to the Democratic Party.
That is correct.
Right? So I don't think the party structure really has viewed us as an electoral force, which we could be. We haven't proven it, but we could be. It is up to us to really make that point. Becoming such a force will require unity. And that's just the bottom line, David. We have to have that. Let's talk about why people believe that their vote don't count. Can you tell us what is that apathy about, David? Why you think people says, oh, you know what? And it happens in every election. Why am I going to vote? For the same person, for the same people, for the same leaders, my vote doesn't count. And when I go and I vote for these people and I go to their offices and I want to get services, I don't get service. Look at our city. Look at the community that I live in. It hasn't changed. It's the same thing over and over again. Why vote, right? So why vote if my vote is not going to count? That's really, that people have have that mindset. And so that's another issue why people don't want to come out and vote, and that's why we don't show those numbers.
Well, I'm going to tell you something. Right now, when Latinos come from Puerto Rico, other Latino countries, and they come here, and also people that have been here for a while, they want to vote, but they also want to see change, physical change. They want to see their neighborhoods look better. They want to see their schools improve, and when they don't see that, they get discouraged. Or when they go to a representative, whether it's locally or a state representative or a city council person, they also want services. And when they don't receive those services that they believe that they deserve, which they do because they pay taxes and they're voters, they feel like, well, why should I vote? That's when they get discouraged.
Well, yeah.
Why?
Right. And you
Nothing's
know,
happening.
nothing happens, right? And energizing those numbers on election day continues to be a struggle at times for the Latino political leaders here locally and abroad. It's just an issue. But if we look at the Latinos when they came out for Barack Obama in 2008, they turned out at 50%. And then in 2012, it was even greater, the participation.
Well, let me. Why? Because Obama made that change. I think it's the candidate. Before Obama, who we had? We had Jesse Jackson, which I take nothing away. I have a lot of respect for Jesse Jackson. Actually, I met him in person. Great guy. Yes. Great motivator. We also had Al Sharpton. He also ran for president. But when you had Barack Obama, you had somebody different. Barack Obama was fresh. He was new. He was slim. He was cool. You know, he was the candidate. As a candidate, wow. He even convinced me right away when I saw Barack Obama.
Yeah.
So we need a Barack Obama.
Yeah, we do. We need.
we need somebody. We need somebody like AOC.
Yeah.
Alejandra Ocasio-Cortez. Why do people like her? Because she's new. She runs her mouth. She's controversial. She's this and that, and people like that.
Yeah, she inspires.
And we don't have that here.
Right, she inspires people, and so
yes, and that's good.
Right, and part of the problem is, one, we don't have people to inspire us. Two, the lack of viable candidates and a disbelief in the electoral process. We've got to make them believe that, yeah, your vote counts. It does count. Our vote should be the big hammer, the hammer that makes politicians respond to your interests. We also need nonpartisan and partisan organizations to help increase voter registration and better educate the Latino voters, which we have done that. I think you have done those efforts across the Commonwealth, educating people on getting out to vote, registering to vote. So you've done a good job in regards to that. The other issue is Latinos have lacked viable candidates willing to engage and empower the Latino community. So, and the other issue is people don't want to run. If viable candidates oftentimes don't want to get involved because they don't want to deal with the minutia of these political leaders and the infighting, because that's another key issue here. But we're going to take a short break. You're listening to Voices of Change on USALA Radio with your host, Leslie Acosta. We have as a guest today, David Rodriquez. We'll be right back.
Regresando a la escuela, sí tenía miedo. No sabía si iba a poder hacerlo. Una de las maestras que está ahí es la señora Araceli. Ella siempre tomaba su tiempo ayudándome a mí. 50% es entrando por la puerta. El otro 50% es haciendo el trabajo. Nunca es muy tarde para obtenerlo.
Encuentra clases gratis para adultos cerca de ti en completatudiploma.org.
150 over 90.
180 over 111.
160 over 110. I had a stroke.
This is what high blood pressure looks like. You might not feel its symptoms, but the results from a stroke are far from invisible or silent. If you've come off your treatment plan, get back on it, or talk with your doctor to create an exercise, diet, and medication plan that works for you. Go to loweryourhbp.org.
If I would have followed a treatment plan, I would not be in this situation.
Thank you and welcome back. You are listening to Voices of Change on USALA Radio with your host, Leslie Acosta. And our guest today is David Rodriquez, the chairman of the Latino Caucus statewide for the Democratic Party. David, at the end of the day, we're talking about, why voters believe that their vote don't count. And, how can we convince people, mobilize people, energize people to say, no, your vote does count. It does matter. And so I believe that one of the things that we can do as a Latino community is talk about key issues that can galvanize the Latino voter population. Latinos very consistently, if you look at historically, David, the issues that are most important to us are education, which is at the top of their issues list. And this is pretty much the same for citizens and non-citizens alike and across the economic and the national origin categories. If you look at it, Latinos, they care a lot about education. They also care a lot about jobs and health, which is the issues that concern them. They also care about immigration policy. They talk about, crime. So I think one of the things that we can do is unite around issues that matter to us, that are important to us, that affect the Latino community. And these are issues that are resounding. These are issues that come up over and over again. When you ask a Latino voter what is most important to you, they mention the first thing, education, right? And then they say jobs, and then they say health, and then they say, crime is an issue also that's important to them. So I think that how we can galvanize people to have a reason to vote. But if we're not talking the issues, if we're not talking about issues that unite us, that can have a common ground among the Latino community, there's no sense or motivation to say, oh, you know what, let's vote around this issue. Like you said, when Obama ran for office, he ran on issues that matter to the Latino, that were important to them. So that gave him a motivation. That gave him a reason to come out and vote, David.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
That is correct.
So what are the issues that our Latinos in those counties across the Commonwealth are talking about? What are the issues that they are talking about that matter to the voters, that are igniting, that are creating that passion to come out and vote for Latinos to get elected into these seats statewide?
I think that you hit it right on the nose. I think education is number one. Jobs, because everybody wants to work for a living, and also healthcare. A lot of people don't have healthcare, and with the different diseases and stuff that's going around, especially in our community with diabetes and other things, some people need that health coverage. So those are the things that basically what we talk about. But it not just anybody could go out there and talk about those things. We need new candidates. All this recycling, the same people over and over. We need new, young candidates to go out there and deliver this message.
I agree.
That's what made Obama. We can't keep recycling the same people over and over again because the people are going to say this is a broken record.
Yeah.
But we could get new people. Yeah, it is. And one of the guys that I'm looking at, and I've been speaking to him since he ran for city council, is Adrian Rivera Reyes, which he's a doctor.
Mm-hmm.
He's a chemist. Mm-hmm. And I've been speaking to him for a while. And I think that this young man, he's in his late 20s, very bright, very intelligent. And I think that this individual could make a big difference in upcoming elections here in Philadelphia.
Well, see, people like that, people that are qualified, people that can be motivated to also be part of the political landscape and shift. People that are viable, that can inspire, that we can say, you know what, this is worth voting for. And so, I agree. But the other issue is the alignment. We need to find what you're talking about. It's a good segue to what you're talking about, which is a new alignment in our political system. We won't be taken seriously in the city or across the Commonwealth unless we are seen as a power block, David. That is a fact. That's to the detriment of Latinos because the power establishment says they don't vote. The Democratic Party says to us, you don't vote. So why should we let them at the table? This is literally what there's. Why should we let the Latinos at the table if they don't vote? So despite the lack of political power, Latinos are emerging as a political force that's equal to the black population in Philadelphia, but yet we're not at the table. We're not at the table. And so we have 187,000 Latinos in the city. Latino and Asian immigrants are fueling the city, the recent population growth. And this is displayed at, when you go to the ceremonies at the naturalization, that takes place every week. You see people being sworn in and becoming American citizens. So there is a growth that's happening, but we're not translating that growth into a voting bloc. The other issue, David, and the last issue that we're going to talk about is looking for inspiration. What you just mentioned about this candidate, Adrian, who's a doctor in his late 20s, who's viable, who's educated, who can inspire, who can motivate, who can galvanize and bring people together. Puerto Ricans constitute the largest Latino voting bloc in Philadelphia. You know that, and I know that. But most of their daily issues, right? And most of their daily issues have a lot in common with that of Latino candidates. What we talked about earlier: education, jobs, and crime. Look, crime and poverty, David, they go hand in hand. That is like faith and salvation. It goes hand in hand. And 44% of Latinos in Philadelphia live below the poverty line. That's twice the national average, and that is very in-your-face issue that we struggle with on a daily basis. Without the resources to make a living, the trickle-down effect of that is crime and the lack of daily necessities, which we see it throughout our city. We want Latino candidates that can articulate a dream and a vision that can inspire us to become politically engaged. That's what we need. We don't need to continue to recycle the same people over and over again, the same political leaders calling the shots over and over again. A lot of people are not politically engaged because we haven't met a candidate that can inspire us and grab our hearts, David. And hopefully, David, with your efforts and the efforts that's being done through the Latino Caucus, we can do this. There's another candidate that you also pushed, and he ran for city council, was Santos. I believe he's half Dominican and half black. David, he also ran for state rep. He was an educator. You remember that young man?
You're talking about Santana.
Santana. That's another.
Edwin Santana.
Edwin Santana, another young kid, educated, a viable candidate, has the heart in the right place. Why can't we get candidates like that? And we have them, David. The problem is that they're afraid to even run for office. They're afraid to stand up to the status quo and to stand up to these political leaders and hoodwinks that we have. And they're afraid to get involved because they don't want to deal with the nonsense. So, David, we have to move the needle here because we are growing in fast numbers, not only here locally but statewide. But we're not translating that power into a voting block. What say you? And you have 3 minutes left.
Well, one of the things we did statewide that we could do here in Philadelphia is I concentrated more on the ages of 18 to 35. Well, why that age? Because those individuals are still fresh. Their mind is still fresh. And we motivate a lot of those voters, especially, and I'm going to give you Reading as an example. I mean, we motivated people from 18 to 35 in Reading, and we got a mayor elected, a Latino mayor elected. We also have 2 people on city council that weren't there before,
right?
In Reading. Even though he's not a Democrat, but also we also have somebody else for county commissioner who made it. He's a Latino that's also made it to county commissioner. So that's a lot of Latino growth for just one election in Reading. If we could do that here in Philadelphia, and all these people were young, all these people were freshly new, you know, there was nobody over the age of 40 that ran. Everybody that ran was, except for Eddie Moran, were young. And we motivated that young vote, the youngsters from 18 to 35. We could really get something going here in Philadelphia, especially with new candidates like Adrian Rivera Reyes and Edwin Santana will be another one. And we could have Maria Quinones if she's going to run, because Maria Quinones is a good example where she ran against the grind all the time and still won. Mm-hmm. Why? Because she gets her people, the people that's going to support her are people going to be from all over and from all age groups, and she has the charisma and motivates people to go out and vote for her, and that's good. We need more people like that.
Yeah,
so that's what we're concentrating on. I'm concentrating on the youth, concentrating from people from 18 to 35 to get them motivated and to get them out there, not only to vote, but also to run for office.
Right. Well, David, we have come to the conclusion of this segment of this episode of Voices of Change. But guess what? Thank you for being with us today. Thank you for enlightening us and giving us that information of the races that are happening statewide. Candidates that are being identified to run and have won. We still have a lot of work to do in that area, but thank you for your efforts. Thank you for the Latino Caucus for its existence, which is something fairly new. You guys only have been in existence about 2-3 years now, but you have made some inroads. But thank you. We're going to bring you back again to continue this conversation, because the 2020 presidential election is coming right around the corner, and USALA is going to play a big role in pushing, these candidates, not pushing them, because we can't really push candidates here at USALA, but we're going to have discussions with certain candidates that are running locally, statewide, and nationally right here on USALA. So thank you for being with us. We'll see you next week. You are listening to Voices of Change on USALA Radio. Thank you.